Welcome to WTC Squadcast, a podcast focusing on international matters, tournaments, communities, and the World Team Championship. The WTC is a proud partner of the T Sports Network, Best Coast Pairings, and is sponsored by The Army Painter. If you'd like to support the podcast and the WTC, please visit our Patreon at www.patreon.com/WTC Squadcast. Now, let's get on with the show.
I only have one rule. Everyone fights, no one quits.
Hello everybody and welcome to the World Team Championship Squadcast podcast. This time Neil is away, so it's me, Ushuk, and I'll be hosting the show. Joining me tonight is Tom Layton and Ines from Scotland. Say hi.
Everybody.
And
that actually really rolled off the tongue quite well. Ushuk, you did quite well on that one, mate. That was really good.
Well,
no tongue twisters on that one. Good shit.
Thanks, but you know I'm recording, right? Anyway.
Yeah, I know, but we do this every time. It's fine. Do you not listen to this podcast?
I do.
Production quality isn't meant to be high, right?
It's meant to be laid back. It's fine.
I know. Okay, then we'll be talking about the Clan Wars event that happened on, let me get my dates right, on September 11th and 12th and it was Ines who hosted it, right? It was your event?
So Team Scotland hosted it, and I did all the work. Is basically how that works out.
All right, then we'll be talking about the WTC Scotland team, and then talk about the event and the list, and just talk shit. So I'll let Tom go.
Yeah, that's good, man. Good shit. I'll go straight into it then, nice and easy. So you say it was like Team Scotland hosting it, but let's be honest, at this point you basically are Team Scotland, right? Not only just because you're the captain, also because if anyone ever hears a Scottish voice on any kind of podcast, it's basically you. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this journey that you've gone on. We'll start at the beginning because rather than me like introducing like where it started, I want to kind of get into like your mindset and understand your journey over the last few years. Where did you first hear about the Scottish ETC team, as it would have been at the time, and what made you want to get involved?
Yeah, so my 40k journey started off mostly just casually. Like I played casually for 6-7 years, like in my garage. I would go to a GW, I would go to a GW store occasionally. And then when I started university, I was going to a local store, and they were running tournaments like once every month on a Saturday. So I'd go along to those, and eventually at one of those, somebody was like, "You should come along to this other tournament." And that was a practice day that was being hosted just before a Caledonian uprising event. So I went or a Caledonian Revolution.
What year was this, out of interest?
2015, I want to say. So like I'd been back playing for about a year, playing in local events for about that same amount of time, and I'd been doing pretty well in that time. Because it was 7th edition, so you could do whatever you want. That was stupid, and I read stuff on the internet that said this is how you get good at 40k, and I was doing it. That was
the
all you
cultist
needed to
style,
do.
yeah. That was fucking.
That was all you needed to do to be good at 6th and 7th edition. Was be the only person in your meta that knew how to play it, and you'd be fine.
True. Yeah.
It doesn't work on a global scale, but at that level, it definitely did.
It worked in Turkey as well. It's just I'm the only person who actually runs the 2-up reroll invul. Oh wow!
I'm the only person who knows that I should be rolling 15 dice at invis every game.
now, it does work on a global scale because 9th edition. But carry on. So
From there I went to this. It was the West Galway guys, and I met Tim Dagnall, who I'm sure many listeners will be very aware of. And Tim was basically, I think I went like 2-1 at this practice day, and Tim basically gave me this thing. Just sent me a message on Facebook like, "There's a team event next month." This was September 2015. I would like you to come and play with us. So I went and played a team event. It's my first proper tournament.
Which one was it?
This
was Clan Wars?
No, this was before that. This was well before that. It was I don't think it ever officially had a name. It was at ELG in Edinburgh. It's the only event I've ever been to in Edinburgh. Because ELG don't really do events anymore. The only name I'm aware of it as is Scottish team event. because once
very good.
never said what it was called. So I did that. There was a flyer at that event that had a bunch of other events on it. I just started going to that, but that was the event where I met. So I met Liam O'Shea there. I met Tim there. I was on Tim's team there. We actually came second. I went 1-1-1-2 with a really bad version of Sean Naden's Lictor Shame list. If that reminds anybody.
Very good.
It was utterly terrible. I played it badly as well. That got me hooked on teams from there, and then I kind of just was like, okay, I want to get involved in the team stuff. So I took a year of getting up to it, and then I qualified for the team the year after that and couldn't make it because uni was kicking my ass. And then the year after that, and I coached that year, and then the year after that, I started playing. So that was kind of
just to get a bit of context on where you started with Team Scotland. How many people were kind of involved with Team Scotland at the time? Was it like a WhatsApp group, a Facebook chat? How many people were kind of involved?
So I vaguely remember like we're still using the Facebook chat that I started using back then, which I would have said was about 2016. And I want to say there was maybe like 15 people in that group chat, 15, 20.
Okay.
And some people left and some people have joined, and we're still about the same number because we don't really add people to it now. But now, because now we have the Discord and stuff like that, and that's just become a legacy of a bunch of people who are not involved anymore. I would say the rankings at the time was probably about 20 people, and we're now up to about 40 with about another 20 people who probably could be on it but aren't on it. But it was a fairly small community at the time. I think I was 9th or 10th in the rankings after my first year of playing. It wasn't a particularly deep community at the time, and we had a lot of people like Neil Powell and Ben Johnson, a bunch of other guys who were down in London-wise. That we just kind of had attached to us, and that's kind of dwindled off over the years as well.
Yeah, and I don't know if those 20 people or 15 people were all of those guys are playing, or was it just, can we get a team together?
Broadly, it was kind of like there was the 4 or 5 people that always formed the core, and then 1 or 2 people that were ancillary, and then a bunch of people who were kind of involved in the team but never went. So you had like the core of the team would have been like Blackie and Bernie, Tim, and a few other people, and then like Neil Powell, that were all involved in that for a couple of years. And then obviously this goes back further than that because these guys were playing before I was, and I'm not 100% on the history before that. You can listen to the episode that I did with Bernie a while back on WTC Squadcast for a bit more of the history from Bernie's perspective.
Sure.
So yeah, it wasn't, because then we had a bunch of people who were just involved. Like Chris Mills was off in America at the time. Colm hadn't started getting involved with the
team. He went
and
coached in 2016, actually. Were you guys?
Yeah, Chris was coached in 2016 and he played in 2017. Yeah, it wasn't a huge community, and it's still not a huge community, but it's definitely wider than it was.
Yeah, and part of the reason why I'm asking, I've got 2 real reasons. The first one there is purely a selfish one, in that I think I can relate a lot to where you guys were then to where I am right now, Team Wales. But secondly, because I can relate to that, I'm sure there are other people out there who can relate to that too. And it's an interesting story to see how you got from here to 3 years later covering top 3 at ETC. While we're on the topic of how many people you actually had like applying and involved in Team Scotland, what was the culture like for you guys? Were you mainly just a group of dudes or just going for a laugh? You had a very specific like identity as a team, like this was why you were going and this was your identity and your morality as a team, or was it just a group of trying to do their best and you were still picking the best players that you could?
It feels kind of half and half. Like there's always that aspect of you can't pick somebody you don't know for the team, right? So even if you're the best player, even if you are the second or third best player in the country, if you're not coming to events and playing with us, we can't pick you because we don't know you're good. We've not seen you in the team environment. So there's always.
Well, it's also not just a case of that as well, but it's also you don't know them as a person. You're going to be spending a week with this guy.
And then when you have the choice between 2 players of roughly equal skill level, you'll pick the person with team experience, which then gravitates towards picking somebody who's already been, and then that tends to be friends, and that's how you propagate the old boys club mentality without ever actually intentionally doing that. It's just you fall into the pattern, and Scotland definitely did fall into the pattern a little bit. It's always felt for me a little bit like we were doing both. I've never been to the event and felt like it wasn't serious, like we weren't trying.
Oh no, of course.
We were never a team that was like out till 3 a.m. drinking on the night on maybe on the Tuesday beforehand, but on the actual like the day of the event, probably not. We'll be back and we'll be in bed. We'll do a team call in the afternoon. We do all the prep work. We do some amount of prep work. There are teams that do a lot more than we do. I'm not going to dispute that. And the teams that did a lot more than we did. We were never one of the teams that was going to Sweden for a weekend practice day before going to the event itself, like some maniacs do. So it's kind of 50-50. Over time, we've tried to push that practice more, but it's difficult because we don't have great venues in Scotland. We have one place that can hold us, and if that's booked out for the weekend, it tends to be a case of we can't do a practice day that weekend. So we've got, for example, the upcoming Battle for Britain, and we've got one practice day scheduled for that. We've had a bunch
You've
of
got a practice
obviously.
day? Fucking hell.
I know, right?
That's already beaten so many other countries. It's like, you actually...
Welsh teams.
Yeah. But it's after list submission, so it only counts for half.
All right. Well.
Okay.
So at least we've got 6 players.
Well, we have. Yeah, we've got players.
Good. I thought you had a bit of an issue.
It's not a super serious team. Like, we're not. You must be playing 37 games a week, and you must be reporting all your game scores. We're not doing what Canada does. Canada are insane, and I have an intense amount of respect for them because they have grown their team incredibly from it. But that schedule only works when you have the group of players that Canada have, where they have that exclusivity, where they had like so many more applicants than we get. Because when you have that level of application, you can say, no, we're only going to pick the people who are committed. We have to pick our best players if we want to do well, and that doesn't necessarily come with the same work ethic because, well, they're already good players. What more do they need to do? And that happens, and you just kind of have to accept that sometimes. But yeah, growing the scene has been great for that because the players that we do have, a lot of the new players we have now are a lot hungrier than people in the past have been, which isn't a criticism of people in the past. They've been doing it for so long that, it's hard to maintain that level of drive when you've got other things going on in your life. But when it's your first or second year of VTC, I really do feel like you get the most out of somebody sometimes when they're just willing to put in, that 3-4 practice games a week and they're constantly talking about this with everybody on the team.
I think more than ever.
Mindset, sadly.
I think more than ever, talking about listing is the most important thing. Like, just having a community you can bash lists around with is insanely important, especially when the game is going so quickly, and especially when the game... I don't want to get into a massive discussion about what the game is right now, but from my perspective, I believe the game is much more uninteractive on the tabletop than it's ever been.
Yeah, the game is less fun than it's ever been for me.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Same for me, 100%. And therefore, I feel like list building is much more emphasized than it has ever been as well. So if you have the time to spam those games, spam those hours, you're going to get the best lists out of them.
Yeah, exactly. When integration matters so much and finding incremental advantages.
Yeah. And I know Canada are obviously spamming a lot of scrims. Whether they're finishing scrims is another matter, but that's a different question that we can talk to.
That feels like that's some personal shade being thrown out there, Tom. Come on, this is about me.
Oh, it's not personal shade. When do you get... No, it's okay. We got a message from a Canadian player that will go unnamed who couldn't play his game and had to bail last minute because he was stuck at a girl's house on the other side of the city.
You know what? Power to him.
Yeah. I was like, you know what, mate? Fair play. At least that's not a bad excuse. We'll take that one on the chin, Beth.
At least you gave us warning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like an hour's warning, but also
that is warning when you're
at the girl's house. You were honest about it. Like, yeah, I'm ill. No, mate, you're not. It's like, yeah, definitely. Fair enough, mate. I'll add that one. So you talked a bit about the Old Boys Club, and I think this often gets so. With the Old Boys Club thing, I used to be on the side that it was always like a bad thing, but at the same time, I now understand why you kind of like slip into that, and equally why it's not necessarily.
Sometimes Old Boys Club is the right choice, and that's always difficult to explain to people.
Yeah. It's just the connotation, and 100%. But you guys have done a fantastic job in like growing your community. As we've already talked about, you doubled the size of the Discord and what have you, of the rankings even. You've got the Discord going, it's massive. You're getting involved. You're everywhere getting recruiting sorted by just appearing on stuff. I've heard people call you the best player in the world, or one of the best players in the world, certain places.
Okay, well, they're smoking something. I'm definitely a player in the world, but I wouldn't go.
Mate, I think that like those kinds of like comparisons are unhelpful to you personally, though, because like you are very
everybody because everybody has
100%.
But
it put the pressure on you that I think is like unwarranted. Like I
do
know
that enough for that myself, guys.
You don't exactly. Need to pile a lot. Well, exactly. Like you don't need to pile on. Like there's no need for that. Like, but, I mean, it's just a bit silly to me because I think like when you've got someone who's competitive as like you and as most of the guys like involved in this kind of circuit, we're all really competitive dudes. We're all driven guys. Like we drive ourselves enough. We don't need to like feel like we have to justify something to anybody else either. At that point, like you've got enough drive yourself and know how much it matters to you.
To completely tangent on this point for a second, I think
you go for it.
The coaching circuit has kind of propagated this a little bit.
100%.
When you're a coach, you have incentive to have this
conversation
happening.
Yeah, have that.
And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And it's always
no.
as much as it can be, really shitty to see, even when the conversation comes up and like your name comes up and then it gets dismissed, and you're like, yeah, it's fair, but it still stings a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not always the healthiest thing, like as an individual, to be involved in, but it's always interesting to see like what people think your skill set is, or to see when people discussing, who's the best of the UK, who's the best of the US, and it's always a little bit of fun. And if you take it with the pinch of salt that outsiders are looking into it, I think it can be a healthy discussion to have occasionally, but it's not one that you should be having.
Sure, I don't think it can ever be objective. It can never be objective, especially when you have massive tournament. Yeah. There's so much variance, especially when you're playing singles play as well. I think it's very, very hard to do, and when you've only got one massive team event per year, it's very, very hard.
Yeah, and then even when you put two players against each other in a team format, you're one of your team, right?
And even then, like you can play better on one day than the other, and like one game is never going to be representative of the entire matchup, right? And as much as easy as it is to meme like Nick and Boxy, both of whom I consider friends, they're good guys, they're very easy to meme. I totally get why they market themselves as that way, because you have to if you're going to be in the coaching business.
And it's not like we can prove them wrong, so power to them. I mean, get that
money.
No.
Guys. I have absolutely, I'm totally down for it. And I have mad respect for what they're doing, and I played Nick quite recently. I haven't played Boxy in a while, but I have mad respect for Nick as a player too. I wouldn't. Like, I'm not going to lob like Richard or John under the bus because I haven't played them and I don't know them very well. So it's just easy for me to do that with Nick because I consider him a friend as well. So it's one of those where I totally understand like why they do it. It's just I want to clarify that before we move on.
But I am one of the best players in the world, and you should absolutely respect me.
Yeah, well, we can't dispute.
I'm really bad.
Just go and hide in the Highlands like the Caledonians of the last 2,000 years, and no one can prove that you're not.
Exactly. So, I can't lose if nobody comes to our tournaments except Scots.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. So we've talked a little bit about how Team Scotland was when you first arrived, and I wanted to move on a little bit to how we got to where Team Scotland is now. So in 2017, I want to say Bernie was captain.
Yes, Bernie took over from James McNaughton, who dropped from being captain about halfway through. Yeah.
That's it. So how did you get from 2016, where you had 20 people on the rankings, and this was just getting involved with Team Scotland, to 2018, where you came third at the WTC and beat some heavy hitters on the way? This wasn't a fluke. You beat England on the way there, mate. You did really, really well. And you beat that Canada team with some legendary players on it. Yeah,
the two most interesting teams you beat.
Yeah, you did. You did great. So how did you get to that spot?
That was just, I think that was the confluence of, we had the best, some of the new blood coming in. So we had me, myself and Aiden both come into the team that year. And then we had the best of the previous couple of years were sticking around. So we had Colm, like at his peak. We had Neil Powell when he was just coming off of like having a really good year. We had Bernie on Tau when Tau were kind of unknown. And we just kind of had this really good... we had Blackie back when Blackie was able to put in serious amount of playtime. It was just a really good confluence of all of the factors came together to give us just one really good year. And we're going to be chasing that high for a while, unfortunately, I think. Because once we had... realistically, I think 3 people from that team are still playing at a serious level now. Which is a shame, but it is what happens with life.
Sure.
It's going to be 4 years ago by the time we hit the next.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a really good confluence that we'll be chasing to try and repeat. Obviously, we had a really bum year the year after. Like we lost a couple people. We had a couple last minute replacements, and like the people that we replaced them with are good players, but they're not. We weren't top 3 in the world team at that point, and it showed.
No, of course.
So I think that year was. I'm not going to say it was a fluke, but it was the culmination of a build up of the past 5 years. Because we had as I recall, 2016, we had a really good year, which was Athens. I think we topped 10 or something in that region.
Yeah. You did well at Athens, I recall,
it was something like that. It was good enough that we would put that one on the mantelpiece. And we had that culmination year, and then the right injection of new blood to boost it up. So Aiden had a really strong year. I did terribly that year, but that was.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. You just ate the bus, mate. That was all it was.
I won the 2 games against Unari that I needed to, and that was all that mattered.
Mate, you beat Unari twice in 2017, mate. I mean, and then the rest of them were Storm Ravens. So I mean, how much you can do about
2018.
Oh, 2018. I'm so sorry.
That was when I was playing the Knights and Cultists list, and it was terrible. I was basically just went under the bus so that our real net list could do work every round.
That was the year where I was playing for Canada last minute. So what I did was like, oh fuck, what factions have I got left? Oh, Knights. Oh, who knows about Knights? Innis. I'll message Innis. Steal Innis's list. Took Innis's list. Couldn't move it on any of the boards because they're all super dense. Melee Knights. Like, oh fuck.
Yeah, that year was rough if you didn't know what the terrain was going to be like.
Oh no, which we didn't.
Got really lucky
which we didn't.
We brought
it was their terrain pack.
Yeah, we got really lucky that year because we just put our tau list on the empty board every round, and then we had like 9 Talos and a Harlequin list that was like, I'm loving this stuff.
Oh mate, that was classic WTC. Tau list on the front board. Yep, Sam, put that down.
Tau list down first, Eldar Plains in the back.
So it wasn't like you ended up having a massive influx of players, a shitload of competition for places, and then you ended up with like a super strong team. It was more you had a bunch of old players who were still really strong, a couple of new guys who were really enthusiastic coming in, and then after that year where you came third, you really started to get the influx. Is that about right?
Yeah, so we had a lot more players on it. That was kind of when so the year after that was the first year. That was the year I was vice captaining, and the year after that, I really I took over the rankings properly and started trying to get people involved in organising practice days off my own back. That was 2019. So yeah, that was the build up to. That was the year where where Barney ran for captain again, and Aiden and Colm took over as vice captains. So that was a really good build year for us. That was like the start of the end of 8th edition. We had a lot of scene growth off of the really healthy years in the middle. Our tournaments were hitting decent numbers, and we didn't have a great ETC that year, and our scene's kind of gone from strength to strength though. Like we've had decent build up from TTS, so we've had a lot of new people join the scene. A lot of people, like even just at my local club, I've got 4 or 5 new people to bring in from that we've started to see coming to mini tournaments and events, and our scene's just exploded in terms of numbers. Like we had a tournament last month where comfortably, I would say a 12th, like 1 in 3 players were people that you would have seen at an event beforehand.
Nice, that's really good.
So Chris Mills was going through the rank, and it was like, I recognize a third of the names here. And I'm like, I recognize slightly more because I've been involved in the TTS stuff, and then I also know some of the guys that are my local guys that are coming along and stuff like that. But it was really great to see. We've had a lot of communities come out of the woodwork and be like, yo, we have 10 players here and we're doing well. So we found a bunch of Aberdeen guys that came down to an event. We had some guys from Falkirk come around. For anybody who's referencing, basically imagine 2 places that are really, really near each other but have never communicated. That's basically Scotland.
It's like Shelbyville in Springfield.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you were, it's like if you walked out of your door and your next door neighbor was completely just built like a massive wall between you, and there's now a hole in that wall because we.
I mean, we all know you're rich. That's not like that thing. That's just your house.
No, not quite. So basically, we had a really disparate club scene for a long time. The clubs never really communicated, and we've kind of had that gap in the wall now where we've got some people coming from Edinburgh to tournaments, we've got some people coming from Aberdeen to tournaments. These are places that are like 3 hours apart that had never communicated before, and it's been really good to see. So we're seeing that growth that way. Obviously, it's a lot of players that are going to need a lot of development time. I'm not predicting that we'll see a bunch of them on the team this year or next year, but in a couple of years' time, when they've had some practice and they can get down to some of the English GTs and the English majors and stuff like that, we might even have a Scottish major at some point this year.
Oh, wow.
That would be a flag to see, given our previous biggest was 56.
Mate, I'll come up for that. Let me know.
I'll send you the details. It's November, though, so it's probably going to be rough.
Check the dates, but send me it anyway. I'll have a look.
Yeah, I'll let you know. So yeah, we might even have a major this year in Scotland, which is something that's probably not happened since it potentially happened when GW were still running the conflict events in Glasgow, which is like the early to late 2000s. And other than that, we have never had an event bigger than a GT in this country. So that would be really good to see, because we've already filled like 50 spaces for that one. We've got space to go to. I think that venue has space to go to 200. So that'll be a massive boost for our scene. It'll just draw players in. We'll have people coming in from out. Like potentially that gives a reason for people to come up to us, as opposed to us having to go down to them, which brings more and better players to us. So I see a lot of good potential for growth in our scene in the future. We have definitely we have peaked, but we're coming back for that. We're coming for that top 3 spot again. We will not let that.
I was gonna ask you about like building teams for like Battle of Britain and Clan Wars and what have you, but you've already covered most of that pretty much with that, and you just mentioned there getting this top 3 spot. Is that what you're aiming for as a team, and how long have you given yourselves to get that objective?
because we're starting a fully new format, like we're doing the WTC, everything has changed now. We're not setting a hard goal. Realistically, our goal is top 10 for the first year. We've got a lot of new players. We will maybe have myself and one, maybe two, three other returning players that have been to a WTC, like been selected. Like we'll have one guy that marked for us that joined for us last minute for definite, and a few other people. So the goal for this year is be good, go 50% win rate, try and do a little bit better if we can. We're not expecting to be crushing people, but we'd like to hope that we can at least do as well as sort of that. We're hoping to be like upper end of the bulk of the team, I suppose, if that makes sense. And then after that, once we've seen that we can do that, we'll start drilling down, and then that'll be when we, trim the fat, get another couple of replacements in, and people who've had another year of development and are better than the weakest couple of players on our team, they get to go and coach or do something similar to that, and then we'll start really drilling for that top 2, top 1 spot that we're really looking for. But for now, it's going to be a case of see where we're at, put in the work we've got a year, put in the work to be a top 10 team, and then if we don't hit that expectation, then relook at our goals and try and figure out what we're doing wrong. That's really you don't get a lot of 100%. A lot of goals iterating for the WC, so we want to make sure we're doing it quickly. But we're a team that wants to take it seriously, and I know that's not what every team gets to do. We're fortunate in that position that we get to be a bit discerning with our team. We get to put in the practice. You've
got the base now that you've got competition for teams as well. It's
not that expensive for us to get there, so it's we get a wider pool of people to pick from. We get a lot of opportunity to practice because we're all fairly close together. Even within Scotland, like we can be fairly spread out, but it's never more than a couple of hours. So we get to be that. We get to be one of the teams that really does try. We just need to make sure we're doing something with that.
A bit of a dark horse, really. Especially like you never historically known as like a 40k region, but you do have that player base now, and therefore you can compete for it.
We're always going for best sports too. That's the real goal. Best sports. I don't know why I get to be on the team for that, but.
We should both make a team of assholes.
We wear kilts, and that means that we get automatic extra votes for some reason.
Yeah, it's because everyone can see the balls, mate. That's why they get.
And we threaten you that we'll go all the way if you don't vote for us.
I mean, it's not a threat when Blackie's on the team, mate. It just kind of happens, but we'll make it work. While we're here, you got the opportunity to kind of see some of your players in action recently. And you saw them in action at the Clan Wars team tournament. And you took out the tournament yourself with your team. Who were you playing with at the Clan Wars event? Who was in your team?
Yeah, so I had Simon Fitzpatrick, who was our last-minute replacement Chaos player for the 2019 one in Novosad.
Imagine Simon being your last-minute placement. Can you actually just give a... in Novosad, sorry. Can you give a rundown to like who Simon is and how he's been doing over the TTS?
So Simon is... a very, very committed player. He has played probably more hours on TTS than anyone I know personally. He always seems to be on that Discord, and he smashed most of the TTS leagues we ran. I don't think he went worse than 4-1 in any of them. Very, very, very good, very consistent player who has picked up Dark Eldar, which is
he has.
Just a horrifying combination.
I believe he's played 11 mirror matches with Drukhari, and he's won 10 of them.
That's not bad. What I do know is in the 3 tournaments...
Do you know who it lost to in this?
Was it you?
It might have been me.
What I do know is that in the 3 tournaments that he's attended, he has played 17 games and drawn one of them.
Pretty good.
Won the rest.
Pretty good.
over 3
tournaments.
LTTS? No, in physical tournaments.
Oh, fine. Yeah, okay, that's a lot better. Good. So he's not one of these...
He's 6-0'd the first event. He 5-0-1 the second, and then he 5-0'd the team event.
Nice.
Simon's real good. He's also going to LVO, so
he really impressed me when I played him. I think the comparison I used actually was Prime Simon Weekly in terms of how he plays.
That's a good sign.
It's good.
He just needs to get over the fact that he always picks debilitatingly terrible secondaries against me, and he'll be amazing. I've never watched it. Never sat and watched a Dark Eldar player.
I used to describe
me. It was hilarious.
Fair enough. So he's an up and coming. He's like an up and coming player for you guys. Could be really
absolutely. He was good before TTS, and then TTS really gave him an opportunity to just play a lot of games and find out his play style. He was one of the players that TTS just did wonders for, and he was really good before we went in, and he's amazing now. He's threatening for best player in the country very, very comfortably.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's a good player. I was impressed.
Was Dave Murray, who is not somebody who's done a WTC or anything like that before, but he is local to me. So I picked him up. I
played Dave as well, I think.
Yeah,
another Drukari player, right?
No, Dave is mostly a Space Marines or Custodes player.
Okay.
Custodes and Guard. I picked Dave up from my local club and basically was like, "You're going to play 40k now," and then we started playing a bunch of 40k, and then he got good credit pretty quick, and that was really nice. And Dave has been playing a bunch of melee Space Marines, so he played Black Templars at the previous tournament, and then he took White Scars to this one. And I think he went undefeated as well. He went 3-0-2 with 3 20-0s and 2 10-10s, which we were pretty happy with.
You've done me a massive favour with that one, Innes, because I actually wanted to ask you first about the White Scars, because you're running like a kind of... You're running the VGV, so you've got 2 squads of 10 Vanguard veterans. I've seen a couple of people switching to like squads of 5, specifically Ramsey, but he's just Ramsey testing stuff. And then he's got the 10 Assault Terminators. I mean, you've got the Dreadnoughts as well. Is this just you guys testing something to see if it's better than the Iron Hands build, or do you genuinely already believe that this is better for your team specifically? They had different
So Dave is very heavily a melee player. Like, it's what he enjoys, and this is for as much as it's a competitive team event, we kind of went into this with an expectation that we're going to be the best team at the tournament, and that we could play our styles and not have to worry too much about playing the octal thing. Dave wanted to play White Scars or Black Templars or something in that vein, so we kind of just assuaged and let him do that. We like the White Scars build, especially with the way... I'll talk a little bit about terrain when I talk about the other 3 lists. I'll talk about them holistically. But it gave us some decent options with terrain choices, and it paired well with the others. Iron Hands is a really cool list, but I don't think it had quite hit its nadir to the point where we are aware of it when we were doing list submission for this, which was like a week and a half before the tournament. So like we were aware of what Nassim had been doing down south, and we'd seen some of the lists coming out of it, but it was enough of a departure from the standard builds that Dave had been playing already that we kind of went with, we'll just stick with the White Scars. It can't be that bad, and it wasn't. It did just fine.
It did fine for you guys.
Fairly solidly for the past like 5-6 months. So.
Yeah, and
it's also very my style as well, so I get the pairing for it.
That's fair. I get the Vanguard veterans. I think everybody listening to this does too. They're quite common. I get the Landspeeder Storms. I get the Relic Contemptors. What a lot of people might not get are the 10 Assault Terminators.
I'm not sure either, if I'm being honest.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dennis. Brilliant.
For what it's worth, on the heavy terrain that we get with WTC, because we played on not quite as heavy as like the standard WTCs, but it was kind of like our heaviest.
You like doing 4 mediums or?
Our heaviest board was probably a medium, and our lightest board was probably a light. Is probably where I put it.
Okay.
We were kind of in the middle. They do pretty well with combat squatting on those boards. You get a lot of options for playing and hiding and chasing angles with them, and they can take a charge, which a lot of stuff in White Scars can't otherwise. So it lets you just some of those missions where you just really struggle with, you have to hold down that center objective with Oath. You put 10 Terminators on there, you're probably coming out the other side holding that objective, unless they massively commit to it, and then that gives you counterplaying options. So they're not something I would use personally, but Dave has been using them for a while, and Dave enjoys them. I would run a 5 personally.
That's fair. It's more of a comfort pick for him, Ben.
There's also there's always the really fun thing you can do with Terminators, where you can pick them up with the Teleport Homer, and then if they've lost a model, drop them down next to the Apothecary, bring a model back 2 inches closer to your opponent, plus the base size, and then charge. And with White Scars, that kind of mobility for like the pick up and drop is not something you really get otherwise. And that gives you some options, especially because you can like wind swift the Apothecary to double moving beforehand. I just delivered this Terminator somewhere that no one's expecting, and that's something only they can do. Which I don't actually know if he ever did, but I should probably check with him. Or tell him if he doesn't know that he can do that.
It didn't turn the game either, let's put it that way. Because if he did,
well,
you probably know about it.
I wasn't really asking, if I'm being honest.
That selection process going really well.
Like, it was a long
You've got too many players now, and if you've got a problem, you need to kick some of these guys. There's too many.
I need to be paying more attention to what they were doing. And then we had Simon was playing a fairly bog standard Drukari list.
Yeah, Drukari list. Yeah, I can see it.
He had like Kelly.
I messaged Drukari. It's fine. Had 4 raiders. It's fine. Yeah, and then your list.
My list, which is weird, I think is the technical term.
I mean, the only reason that you took this, let's be honest, it's not the best list, because the best list, unfortunately, was killed when Games Workshop moved the best unit in the game to the Legends section.
Yeah, I unfortunately could not run any Rot Toads.
So
I was playing New Thousand Suns, kind of. and then Chaos Demon. So I had like Aramon, the 3 cast Exalt Sorcerer, and 5 Rubrics. And then the standard suite of buff characters with the Grit and Clean ones, Slimex and Epidemius, 3 squads of Nurglings, 2 squads of Furies, and 22 Beasts of Nurgle in 3 squads.
2 squads of 7, 1 squad of 8. Yeah.
2 squads of 7 and 1 squad of 8. And I believe I described this list on the list document as he's just standing there menacingly. Because this list has a grand total of 7 guns, 3 of which are bolt pistols or crack grenades. And that's it. It doesn't really do much. It smites pretty good. It can instantly put out like 15 mortal wounds turn, just from smites. It's pretty decent in combat. But this was just, if we were playing this as like an actual 3-man teams, I probably would have brought something else. But I was running this to practice for like future events, and I wanted to see how this did in scenario. So in a pure 3-man teams, I probably wouldn't recommend doing this if that was all you were thinking about.
Yeah.
But
also when you
this list takes a punch.
Oh, well, when you're playing a 3-man teams, what are you expecting? You're expecting Sisters, you're expecting maybe Orcs, you're expecting Admech, Drakari, and Ironhands. Maybe, like, of those 5 factions, you're going to probably see most of the other, like, trios being something like that. Did you play against any of those 5 factions? How hard did they hit you?
I played against... What did I play? I played against Blood Angels in the first game, which was my only loss, because I could not kill those fucking Sanguinary Guard with Smite. It just didn't happen.
You should have just been better at the game, and
I should have, yeah. I did... To rough count, I did 73 plus d6 mortal wounds to a squad of Sanguinary Guard and killed 3 in a bit.
Yes, very good, very good.
Yeah, it was really rough. Like that game slipped out my hands for a couple of mistakes, and then I needed average dice to bail me out, and I didn't get them. And I still only lost that one 15-5, which I'm not unhappy with.
Yeah.
So we ended up drawing that round because our White Scars 10-10 with White Scars 10-10 with Sisters, and then the Drakari only got like an 18. I know, shockingly bad.
Yeah. Terrible. Oh well.
I played against round 2. I played against Custodes twice, which I won both games of. I'm not going by round now. I'm just going by matchups I remember.
Fine. Yeah,
I played against the 17 buggy list, which I beat 13-7 because I had forests. Like literally because I had forest. If I didn't have forest, I'd have got them smashed. But I got board choice, so I picked forest, and it was fine. It was only really traumatic. For context, I resolved 4 shooting attacks. I resolved 1 round of shooting attacks that game, but my squad of Rubrics got a buggy, and conservatively, he shot 4,000 shots at me. So
okay, nice. So you played against the Orcs.
Yeah, against the Orcs. Conservatively, 4,000 shots he resolved. And then my last game, I played against 4 Dread Knight Grey Knights, which was a really weird game where I got to play with 3,000 points for free.
Very good. Very good. Because you get bringing it back with the stratagem. Yeah.
I brought the Great and Clean one back and 2 squads of beasts.
So as you didn't play against the Admech or Ironhands, specifically the 2 biggest shooty boys in the game, most likely, how do you feel like you do against those 2 now that you played this list?
I would say that the Orcs shoot about as well as either of those. So I played a practice game against Admech the night before, and it went about as expected. They shoot and kill the Great and Clean one, and then they shoot through the beasts roughly slow enough that I get points. It's hard to get twed with this list. And if I can put this list down into Admech or Ironhands and get 7-8 points in a decent matchup, because I can raise banners and then take Stranglehold and like smite them off 1 objective at turn, anything like that. It's hard to get smashed really badly with this list, and that's kind of what it's there for. It's the volume of shooting you need to fully kill a squad of beasts is not super easy, and then if you add on any board with woods or anything like that, it gets pretty good. And then you get more terrain. You can hide once you stop being able to hide stuff, which is not something I experienced this tournament because I didn't get like 2 9x9. Sometimes that happens, and if you can play that game, it's really funny.
Yeah, and I guess this is one of those lists that does really well into an 8-man teams as well, because if you're taking away the Admech or something like that, you're freeing up a lot more space later in preparing for the rest of your team.
Yeah, exactly.
But equally, if you're doing that, you're just going to lob yourself into something that physically can't deal with your army and get yourself a 15 to a 20 point whatever.
It's one of those where you either pair a shooting list into it and chip away at me before I get to you, enough that I just don't run at you and we just sit and stare at each other while you chip shoot me. And it doesn't matter because you're never finishing kills and I can take to the last and leave 1 beast alive and a squad at the back, and who gives a shit, you're never going to come to me. Or you give me a grindy list in the middle that I will ground you because all my points are spent on grinding, and you've only spent some of your points on that, so the beast will beat you. So like Custodes with Telemons, you can smite through a Telemon in a turn with this list with the 2 Psychers. It's not super likely, but you can do it if they don't get their 4 up deny. You can get through like I killed a Redemptor Dread through the 5 of Feel No Pain in a phase. I killed 5 Blade Guard off of the center objective just with the 2 Psychers and the Great and Clean one. Stuff like that's not unlikely to happen.
Sure.
So it beats on other lists that are trying to fight and hold the center. You play this in a mission like Direct Assault or Priority Targets. It's taking the center if you're playing another list that doesn't shoot it off. So it does work. It's never going to score super huge unless you give it something like Custodes that it will just outscore. But
and the mortal wounds are actually appreciable at that point as well.
Yeah, exactly. Even stuff like the Telemon where you're winning on 6s, if it doesn't have access to the reroll wound stratagem or the turn of reroll stratagem, you put the mortal wounds on 6s strat on the Beast of Nurgle, you'll actually take it down eventually. You win that combat with the Scottish Beast against a Telemon. It's quite funny. So no, I enjoyed it. It's not a singles list in the slightest. Please don't.
No, absolutely not. No.
At all.
No, especially not LGT where you need to win massive games.
Yeah, I know Stephen Mitchell is the guy who pioneered this previously with the previous Thousand Suns Codex.
Awesome.
And he was doing pretty well with it in singles beforehand, but that was before Admech and Drakari. So
shout out to Stephen Mitchell. Good lad.
Or mostly before Drakari. Like it was Liquefire Drakari, which is really bad into this, whereas Double Trueborn does a lot better into it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. So you've talked a little bit about your team's lists. Were there any other super interesting lists out the field that you wanted to talk about?
So the one that I really wanted to talk about in terms of like transferring from singles to teams was the 17 buggy list. I played against Bruce Wade from the Good, the Bad, and the Bruce, which is my favorite team name. And he had the 9 Mega Truck Scrap Jets and the 8 Rocket Truck Swing Buggies list. And in teams, if you don't pair for this list and you get put on a board with forests, its damage is so bad. It was actually quite funny to just watch it resolve like 93 plus 3 missile shots and 60 bolter shots or big shooter shots per squad of 3 mega tracks into a squad of beasts and do like 2 damage, 1 damage, 3 damage. So if you're playing against this in teams and you can put this on the board with woods, you should do that. If you're playing on a team with this list, you should do your very utmost to get board choice for this list. Because if you get put on a board with woods and you're playing anything that's like, if you're playing the freebooters version, it's a little bit easier, but the Blood Axes version in particular, it really gets shut down by woods. So just watch out for that. If you're, it's not a nuanced list, it's not a subtle list, and if you take away the one thing it does really well, which is shoot things that god off the board, and you stop being able to do that, you're going to have a really bad time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're actually seeing quite a few of those pop up right now. I've seen quite a few guys playing with massive buggy lists, and to be honest, the most impressive thing about that list, mate, the most impressive thing about that list is how the hell they've managed to get their hands on 18 buggies.
Yeah, I'm really curious about how they got 18 from GW.
I know, same.
Everybody bought a bunch of those Speedwar boxes, right, back in 8th edition.
Yeah. I mean, they did sell out, so makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Makes sense.
That's why everybody. I shook my couch cushions and 3 rocket trucks fell out.
Yeah, absolutely. Good effort. Were there any other lists you want to talk about?
The next one I wanted to talk about was just in terms of it being a new codex, was Stephen Burns' also from Good Bad the Bruce 6 Dread Knight list, which is just an ungodly amount of violence. Steve actually won the prize for the highest scoring player that wasn't on the winning team, because I believe he scored 86 points in 5 rounds with that Grey Knights list.
So you're saying he was busting his teammates to get the good shit?
Well, they came second, so they didn't do that bad. Dude was like just rubbing people the feck over. No, they were busting their night list, and then the Megatrax and that, because they just brought 3 vehicle lists, and we're like, you won't have 3 lists that can beat vehicles.
Yeah, it's fair. Makes sense in that kind of a lower player event. Yeah, good shit. And was there a depth card list that you liked as well?
Yeah, so the last one I want to talk about was Colin Rose from Plastic Crackheads, which is also a fantastic team.
Lovely
if you want to go and look at this event on BCP, like 6 out of the 10 team names are just fantastically funny.
Welcome to Scotland. Yeah,
I'm very proud of them. So the last one was Colin Rose, who I don't think did massively well, but his team did come 4th. And I just thought this was a really interesting list in that it's a Death Guard list with Mortarion, 2 Plaguebush Callers, 3 Blight Haulers, 3 Float Drones, and a Team Prince, and then it summons the plague guy that can give -1 to hit, or +1 to wound or anything like that from the Poxbringer, and Epidemius.
Yeah.
And then it's just this massive wall of stuff that goes up to toughness 9. And if you don't deal with this quickly, like if you get to play into this with a list that's not super up on being able to shoot down Plague Scholars and Mortarion, and you try to play a grind game against this, by the time that it gets up to toughness 9 on Mortarion and the Plague Scholars, you're not going to kill it fast enough. And if you have another Nurgle list and you play into this, it stacks off both players' Nurgle demon kills with Epidemius. So I'm just a really, really big fan of this. I think it was the most interesting list that got brought out. I don't think it had a great time. I think he played against a few Dark Eldar players, and given the state of 40k at the moment, that just means you're not having fun.
It's not gonna end well. But it is a great opportunity with these like little team events. I say little team events, but I mean it's like team events, like that aren't the WTC.
Yeah, they're not high stakes.
Yeah, they're not high stakes where you're able to actually get out there and test out these lists, because it's one thing playing these lists in singles play, and one thing playing these in teams. And like you were saying, with your Toads list or your Plague Beasts list, you wouldn't play that in singles because it just wouldn't work. But you still know that you can go out there and test it in teams because it's a unique environment where different things do well. It's an entirely different meta.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just sometimes I just really want to see what happens when I play Beast into Grey Knights, and it turns out I win 18-2.
It turns out that the Grey Knight Beast killers or Demon killers just get to kill more demons. They don't actually win the match. Yeah,
exactly. There is nothing like watching a squad of beasts literally one round of Dread Knight.
Yeah, you're meant to be good at killing demons, not beating demons. So not necessarily the same thing, but it works out quite well. Ishik, did you have any questions for Innes before we sign off?
No, not really, except for what is next for Team Scotland? You mentioned that there was a tournament in November. After that, what can we expect from Scotland?
So, as a team, we have got Battle for Britain, which is Battle of Britain. I can never remember which one it is. Which is like an invitational event that the Gaz Jones from Wales is running. So we've got 3 teams going to that, which is gonna be really good fun. As far as actual events in Scotland, we have got a 1-dayer at the end of October, which is called Close Ranks, and then we have Clash of Alba Winter Assault, which is that potential major in November, and then we're probably not looking at having another event until January, February, just with being closed over the Christmas season. So for us on a tournament level, don't expect to see a massive amount, but there will be a bunch of us going to a lot of the English events that are running over that period. So expect to see results coming out of us, and we'll probably be posting on our Facebook page for Leicester GT, Manchester GT, all those ones that Zach's running in the new year, and over the December Christmas period. So yeah, it should be really good. Be good to get a lot of us out going practice, and we've got a few of us going to LVO as long as that's legal. So we will hopefully get some coverage out of that as well.
Yeah, should be good.
Okay, so where can people find you and your team?
Yeah. So me personally, you can find on Twitter at NSA Wilson. I fully recommend not following me, but you can if you want to. But for the team stuff, it's Facebook is Team Scotland Warhammer 40k, and we tend to post if we've got any events coming up, or if we're at events and some of us do well, we'll tend to post up there. We've also got a Discord community, which you can find linked there. If you are Scottish and you're interested in getting involved with that, please do get in contact with me on Facebook, with the Facebook page, or join the Discord and just ping us a message. We're more than happy to field any questions and to help anybody out who's looking at getting involved.
Oh yeah, love it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for joining. And this was nice to listen to. Essentially, I was like,
how does it feel being on this end where you get to listen to it live, Ishik?
Oh, it's much better. And I know that after the show, there's the after show talk, which is much better than this one. This one is rubbish. It's like no.
The worst part I've always found with being on podcasts is that if it's a podcast that you listen to regularly, you just miss a week of episodes.
Listening to podcasts, Megalol.
Oh yeah, sorry Tom. I've never once listened to one as Wargamer.
No, neither have I.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for joining. I'm not going to comment on that. And like Ines mentioned, if you want to join the Scotland 40k community, you can find them on Facebook, or you can choose to not follow Ines on Twitter. And Tom, do you have anything to finish us with?
Nope. See you later.
Okay, then. Bye.
All right.